here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Alrighty, and here on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network, a reminder, tomorrow I will air just a bit more of a previously unaired Terminello's Take, in which we delve into whether or not the Knicks-Heat rivalry is the same as it was in the 90s. The comparisons have been flying high prior to the start of this series, which now Miami leads, and I do believe the Knicks still have a shot in Game 5. They've got to rebound, right? Because that's what they didn't do yesterday. They got to rebound in Game number 5 against Miami, both figuratively and literally. We'll see what happens. But today, there's a couple of things I didn't get to talk to you yet, because obviously we had a special memorial service on Saturday for my dad, Kentucky Derby Day, and whatnot. But what was going on in the city of New York is kind of a highlight of what we're talking about with A.J. Rice today. So we all know, unfortunately, that Jordan Neely died in the chokehold of a former Marine on the subway last week. The man put Neely in the chokehold because he was worried that things were going to escalate with the homeless man that was mentally disturbed. But as a result of this chokehold, that, at that point, if you subdue him, you should call the cops. But the Marine did not. And unfortunately, Neely did die. Now, prior arrests or prior convictions or prior acts of violence that Neely might have committed aside, what happened with the chokehold, firstly, should not have happened. In the sense of, you subdue him, you should get help after that. But then, the woke crowd that says, let these mentally disturbed roam the subways, basically, that's what they're saying, right? Disrupt the train service, the subway service, on 63rd Street and Lexington Avenue. And I'm thinking to myself, thank God I didn't go to work that day, or these protesters, I would say anarchists, would have disrupted all the trains, the subway rides. It would have freaked me out, to be honest. And so isn't the better idea, woke crowd that wants to protest on the subways, and the subway tracks, I should say, and disrupt service, wouldn't it be better to come to the table with homeless outreach of New York City? Wouldn't it be better to come to the table with Mayor Adams and say, why aren't you getting them the help they need? Wouldn't it be better to come to the table with even Mayor de Blasio and ask him to his face, where is that money from Thrive NYC? Wouldn't diplomacy, not disrupting train service, disrupting the lives of innocent New Yorkers, be better? I think so. Because I think what happens is your message gets ruined when you disrupt subway service of the innocent New Yorkers that just want to get to work or where they're going. But yes, what happened Saturday was a act of wokeism, I believe. And that's where I welcome in my next guest, A.J. Rice. He's the man of mans behind Publius PR. And he's the author of The Woking Dead. And I welcome him now to my podcast. A.J. Rice, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's an honor. We'd love to talk to your audience. All of our clients that have been on have loved it. And, Alex, you're a patriot, so it's a pleasure is mine.
All right, well, speaking of patriotism, you talk about The Woking Dead. That's your book. The wokeness in New York is here because we're just banning natural gas from future buildings in New York. I mean, the wokeness never stops, AJ. I don't know if you want to talk current events or your book or where you want to begin today.
Yeah, look, it's in your kitchen. It's in your restaurant's kitchen. It's always been in your public schools. It's had different names. Wokeness in the public schools could have been political correctness. At the core of it, though, whether it's big tech pushing it or Hollywood pushing it or academia pushing it or the news media, it is basically cultural Marxism. That's what it is. Cultural Marxism. So it's been around a long time. The Walking Dead is just the latest iteration of the ideology that these guys are pushing. And one of the reasons that they push it culturally is because they knew when Marxism really took hold in Europe and it was starting to make its way into Asia, it starts to make its way into Latin America in the 20th century, in the early 20th century, quite frankly, before World War I, you basically had the overthrow of certain regimes like, Russia and a few other places in the beginning of the 20th century, where you had this sort of peasant class of workers that were being railroaded by either an autocrat like in Cuba, North Korea, or some colonial power, or some, sort of authoritarian magic kingdom like the czars of Russia. And you had workers revolt and overthrow their masters. So the problem with that is, in the United States, we have something called a middle class. So our workers fight our wars. They do all sorts of labor that makes life possible. So the Marxists here, when they got here before, around 1910, 1912, it dawned on them they weren't going to get a revolt by a bunch of plumbers and bricklayers and longshoremen and carpenters. So they needed some other way to overthrow American culture, because the workers of the world here were not going to unite. I mean, these guys, most of our blue-collar workers or immigrants that came here, they were escaping some dump in Europe or some religious persecution in Europe, and they've never seen this kind of freedom. So that, you could roll up to their door and try to push Karl Marx on them. It wasn't going to work. So what did they do? They infested academia, Broadway, the original silent radio, silent pictures, early radio, the media, newspaper business. There was no TV yet. But if you fast forward 100 years, these are the same cats we're fighting now. These are the Walking Dead now. 100 years ago, cultural Marxists. 30 years ago, the political correctness movement. Today, the Walking Dead. The difference between now and then, of course, is that they have something they didn't have 100 years ago or even 30 years ago. And that is big tech. Big tech acts as their force field, as their bouncer, as the person that picks winners and losers. It's their midair refueling tanker. It protects them so that they could go out and try to change the culture, change your child's gender, change what food you eat, change what TV shows you watch. And slowly but surely, incremental cultural Marxism is how they're going to get their revolution. And it's working. It's working.
AJ, I got to ask you this, and I love that you've been raring to go today. Let me ask you this, though. Is there cultural wokeism on the right as well? Because we always talk about the left. Any right-wing cultural wokeism that you're seeing that maybe we should address as well?
Well, there's no cultural Marxism. Is there wokeism on the right? There's not wokeism on the right. But like my dear friend Andrew Breitbart used to say, and sometimes you'll hear it come out of a Gutfeld's mouth or a Joe Rogan's mouth or an AJ Rice's mouth, and is that there is a reflexive censorship bone among certain sort of uptight, sometimes religious conservatives. They don't like certain things. They want us all to be Little House on the Prairie. It's the modesty movement, right? Well, the era of Trump is not the modesty movement, unfortunately for them. Conservatism is not going to go back to the please and thank you Mitt Romney days of the Republican Party. That's dead. You put a freaking nail in that. That's over. So, yeah, in the past, guys like Lenny Bruce and Joan Rivers and Frank Sinatra and Bob Hope. Sometime Hope was very clean, but look, certain comedians through the 60s and 70s, yeah, they were getting attacked and they were getting boycotted and they were getting dinged. Sometimes they were getting arrested for all kinds of crazy blue book laws if they, made fun of the president in a joke or told a homosexual joke or whatever, because of, censorship that was coming at the time from usually religious sectors that were upset about the libertine aspect of curse words on stage and so on. But the power that they have today is gone. I mean, let's be honest. Bill Maher knows that he can make fun of the Jesuits. He can make fun of the Franciscans. He can make fun of rabbis all day long, and no one's going to jump out of the bushes and stab him, or he's not going to need a food taster. He's not going to need a remote starter for his car. But if he makes fun of the trans movement, if he makes fun of people that think, that all of American history needs to be erased, 1619 Project, cancel culture, same thing with Chappelle and others. I mean, look, let's be honest. Guys like Maher and Rogan and Chappelle, I mean, they're not Ben Carson. They're not Newt Gingrich. They're not Sean Hannity. Okay? These are not people that probably agree with us on 80% of things. But when it comes to censorship and free speech and cancel culture, they know where the fascism is going to come from. They know where the totalitarian, creeping, cultural Marxist cancel culture is going to come from. It's going to come from the left. And you can cite stuff from 100 years ago where like Graham Greene novels and Hemingway novels were being censored or this or that. You can do that all day long. And yeah, Lenny Bruce getting arrested on stage in New York. You can do that. And that was usually religious people that were very uptight that didn't want to hear certain things or read them. But that's not who's leading the assault on the culture today. Okay?
Tucker is a huge, cultural icon, if you will, on the right. Was he canceled by Fox News, or was there legality there? What's your take on that?
I mean, I really can't. I'm not quite sure. I do have some people that have talked to him. But from what I can tell, it appears that Tucker's story selection was part of, meaning what he wanted to report on, was part of the reason he's no longer on the air. Because if they had anything devastating, it would already be out, because their bleeding audience and there was a ton of right wingers that, quite frankly, would only turn on the channel for him. They don't care about the other 23 hours. So if they had something crazy, we'd probably have seen it by now. Tucker sending this text and that text and calling a woman some name, or a person some name, a curse word this, a curse word that, the 7 dirty words, look, when they got rid of O'Reilly, they did a gigantic document dump. And it was, God bless O'Reilly. But, O'Reilly was treating Fox News like he was, Roger Sterling on Mad Men. He was, saying all kinds of crazy stuff to women and so on. They don't have any of that on Tucker. They're in the backyard with shovels looking for something. They can't find it. They've got a couple, profane text messages or emails. And if you watch Tucker's video, it's patently clear he's alluding to the fact that his story selection, it looks like, and the fact that they had to cut a check for $800 million the week before, probably, to Dominion because of certain story selections, might be the reason why, he's gone.
I want to focus on your book because obviously Walking Dead has a lot of interesting stories, but you wrote this from what I could tell, the beginning of the during the pandemic and then during the election. It was published in 21. Firstly, for those who have read the book, are you going to update it? Because obviously there's been a lot more since Biden got elected, right?
I'm halfway done volume 2. So that's on its way. Yeah. So I'm working on volume 2. The book is called The Walking Dead, How Society's Vogue Virus Destroys Our Culture. Publius Prose, volume 1. So what is the Vogue virus? It ain't from China. It's the woke mind virus. Elon's been talking about it. Bill Maher was talking about it with Elon. That was the true virus that got us during COVID. because, COVID comes from China. It's basically an authoritarian dress rehearsal. They wanted to see how much pain they could put us through and what we would take before we yelled uncle. And a lot of us complied. A lot of us walked right up against the wall and blew a kiss to our executioner. And it wasn't just the masks and the plane fights and the stuff in schools and the plexiglass. And it was really the highest concentration of authoritarianism since probably FDR put the Japanese in internment camps in California. I mean, it was crazy. So they got a taste of it. And when you give people like that power, they don't want to give up that power. They want to try to figure out ways to hold on to it, to not let it go. And that really was the virus that was spreading. It was control. And then once the kids were locked down and they were no longer in school, let's slow pump them full of woke garbage. So whether it's the trans mafia or when George Floyd, the patron saint of fentanyl, died, it was allowing craziness to run through the streets. Half the country's locked down. The other half's in the streets pulling down statues of Christopher Columbus and Teddy Roosevelt. So that was the plan. Capture, control, and then slow pump wokeism through the TV set and through the phones, TikTok and other things, into the youth. And look, I mean, these Gen Z is filled with mental illness. Why? Do you think the government is not culpable? Of course they are. You know, of course they are. I mean, and this is the fight of our time.
AJ, what you're talking about, it was a real summer of love in 2020, right? That's what they all wanted to say. But here was what's scaring me, and maybe you agree. What scared me was how complicit we were. Even I felt at some point down the road, I'm like, wait a minute, why am I doing all of this? Why are we so easily submissive? And I think that's the scarier part than them inflicting the pain is how submissive we were. I mean,
sure.
We got to wake up.
Well, look, it's like, I got married in the middle of this nightmare, and Northam was still the governor of Virginia. I basically had to have a secret wedding, like it was, freaking Game of Thrones. I had to rent out an entire property, that had a restaurant, so I couldn't really bring out outside caterers. It was between phase 2 and 3, and they kept fluctuating in Virginia. Oh, you can have 55 people at your wedding. Oh, you can have 85. Nope, back to 55. Oh, back to 85. This is what they were doing. So I had a Game of Thrones style secret wedding with no masks. The servers had some masks on. The band
not a red wedding, right?
It wasn't a red wedding, but I'm sure if Northam would have found out, it might have been. So, or that would have been a blue wedding from him. But the point is, we altered our behavior, and they loved it. Look, I want to go to Arizona. I want to go to Florida. And in order to do it, I got to put a face diaper on for a year and a half, 2 years. And we all did it unless we drove. We did it. They watched us. We all got it. We all loaded ourselves onto boxcars. It's ridiculous. So
if you love AJ's humor, I mean, he does have a lot of wit, and I've heard him on other radio shows, and I'm just so glad he's with me on. And that's what The Walking Dead is. It's a really satirical, funny, humorous take to this. I mean, there are some great zingers in there, but when writing this, how were you able to find humor in such a disastrous situation, even deadly? I mean, yes, COVID was deadly. We can say that, but you found the humor in it all. So how were you able to do that in such a very serious time?
Yeah, well, look, I guess the definition of comedy is to transform horror into humor, right? That's one of the many definitions, right? Tragedy plus time equals comedy. That's tragedy plus time, right? Can I make fun of the Holocaust yet? Can I make fun of 9/11? Can I make fun of Barack Obama's mole in his face? Or Michelle Obama or Michael Obama or whatever the hell her name is? But look, you have to, my brand is to bring levity. I was raised around stand-up comics. I'm friends with them. I study them. I read memoirs about them. The last section of the book is called What Would Joan Rivers Do? And I say, don't get up in the morning and say, what would Reagan do? What would Trump do? What would Churchill do? Say, what would Joan do today? And go take your enemies on like Rivers would, okay? Whether it's the Palestinians or the liberals. It doesn't matter. You take them on the way Joan would, and the way she did, the way she still would be doing if she was still with us. And the book is an easy read. It's a fun read. I'm like the R-rated. I'm like a PG O'Rourke and Joe Pesci had a baby. So you have to have satire in all of this.
I think we can both agree Biden's a walking satire right now. Every time he speaks, it's like, what is going on, right?
Yeah, to everybody except the goofy Gen X, Lily White evening host, the late night host. They can't seem to figure out any jokes about him.
Do you have any grandkids? Do you have any grandkids? You know how many grandkids you have there, AJ, or what?
Do I have any grandkids? I'm 40. No, I don't have any grandkids.
Okay. All right, so you don't have to worry about that. Biden doesn't know how many grandkids he has, right?
Oh,
so I think that's. I just want to make sure you have your marbles.
He is he's the leader of the Woking Dead. He is a reanimated corpse. He shuffles about with sundowner syndrome in his slippers, and they put stuff in front of him that he signs. He starts at 10, he ends at 4 every day. And he's like sort of the perfect drone for the Woking Dead that are burrowed into our government. They're burrowed into the administrative state. He's a perfect drone for them because he's basically a meat puppet that they can basically, like an empty trash can, that they can fill all their woke hopes and dreams with. And he's doing it for them. He's doing it. Now, Congress is split. That's good. He's going, certain things he's not going to be able to do. Most of the crazy stuff he's doing, he's going to have to do by executive order at this point. But look, don't ever look to the government to save you from wokeism. Go out, take your town hall back, take your school board back, replace the dog catchers in San Francisco. Do whatever you got to do. Do whatever you got to do. But, don't expect the government to come save you, right? It's like Reagan used to say, the scariest words in the English language: I'm from the government and I'm here to help. I don't care whether they're wearing a rubber, Kevin McCarthy mask or a rubber Nancy Pelosi mask. So, Pelosi's
some say it's a rubber Joe Biden mask, but we won't go there.
Pelosi's mask looks like a poorly wrapped baseball, but that's another topic for another day.
Does it melt with the ice cream? I mean, come on now. Got to ask you this, though, because you do have some interesting facts in there that maybe people didn't know. How much research did you go into to write this book? Because you have a lot of things that even I said, I didn't know that was going on during all this.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of stuff on China, and there's a section on China in the book. I spent some time on, sports and entertainment and, some technology that's starting to scare the hell out of us. Things are moving very quickly. So, that's why I'm working on a volume 2. And look, when volume 2 comes out, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the racial aspect of this, and the concepts of the 1619 Project and white privilege and, this idea that, the country's intrinsically racist from its birth, which is, garbage. But yeah, look, I'd like to do research. I will tell you, I spend more time trying to craft a joke than I do research. So,
Well, just don't go on strike.
Like look, I'm doing this. Right? You see who we work with. We work with all the big names, and my life is basically research because, I'm dealing with some of the biggest stars out there in conservatism. We've got a Judge Jeanine book coming up. We're helping President Trump with his Letters to Trump book. Wow. Look, we work with everyone from, Robert Malone to Laura Ingraham, on and on. So, it's fun, but you gotta laugh, man. You
also have the mom and pop CEO, meaning you have the big stars, but you also have the ones that are on the ground making a difference in their community. And that's what I love about Publius, is that you guys go on the ground as well as look in the top tier of the party as well.
Absolutely. Look, we have grassroots groups. We have people that are famous. Yes, you know them, but people that you didn't know that have amazing stories, amazing memoirs, religious people, people talking about global warming or immigration or technology. So, and we try to get them out there, get their message out there, because a lot of the levers of our society right now are definitely pushing censorship.
Well, right, except for Elon, thank God. Although he's been kicking out people from Twitter, which is questionable, but that's another story for another day. Hey, AJ, you have all these guests, and sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to grab them," but I also love the information you put in them. So if people in the media want to know who Publius is pushing out there, and not only that, the stories that you guys are finding that we may not find. I mean, I just read today the IRS. You're right about how the IRS wants to just take more and more from you, and Biden's allowing that, right? So there's some other. It was a celebrity chef piece that you were talking about. That
Yep.
we're going to raid workers' tip jars. That's the article you put in there. So there's
Yep.
stories like that you're finding out, and I think people, even if they don't necessarily know the guests, can benefit from the stories as well.
Absolutely. I mean, look, due to different levels of censorship, we had to migrate some of our pitching capabilities. And for those in the audience that don't know what it means, is that it's like an email marketing platform, right? Like MailChimp or Constant Contact. Well, due to the nature of our guests being conservative, we've been thrown off of those platforms multiple times. We've used our real name, we've used fake names, we've tried it all. But at the end of the day, if you use the word vaccine or insurrection or January 6th or stolen election, or you use any of those phrases, or if you use the name Bobby Kennedy Jr., you might get tossed from one of these platforms. So it's not just LinkedIn and Facebook canceling people. These are services. These are services you pay for. You load a list in. Okay. Alex is in our list. So he gets loaded in, and we send out, missives like press releases, guest pitches. And what's happening now, and AI is going to allow this to happen even better and faster, is that they're reading them and they're shutting us down. So in order to get around that, I literally had to turn our Substack account into a guest pitching mechanism. Now, we have all kinds of content flowing through there, not just guest availability. But if you go to the Publius National Post on Substack, you can see a lot of what we've got going on.
AJ, I got to ask you this because it just came to mind. How about the trans woman? And whatever people want to be, that's what they're. But don't mess with women's sports. That's what I've been saying this whole time. And there's a group that want to actually get Congress to sign a Women in Sports Protection Act. Are you involved with them at all? Are you pitching them at all? Because that would be a great connection to have. These women that are saying, "Hey, keep them out of our sports. We want to have, Title IX happen for a reason, did it not? And that was to protect women."
Yes. No, well, look, women exist on Tuesday, but not on Wednesday with the left. So we're not working with that group, but we're spiritual brethren. I'd love to work with them. We do work with people that make this their issue, above and beyond. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing that to see the left. And my wife jokes about this. I mean, she always said that, eventually the left is going to come for, women that are naturally. I mean, look, they're attacking the author of the Harry Potter books. I mean, there's all kinds of famous women that are getting hammered on this. And it's amazing. It's just another way for men to take a woman's job. And wasn't that the original intent of feminism? And Gloria Steinem's still alive, and some of these other, feminists are still alive. And there are a few women of the left that have fought back. Camille Paglia in Philadelphia, Naomi Wolf. I mean, Naomi Wolf was the feminist guru. I think she wrote a book called Vagina or something, and History of the Vagina or something. And now, because the goalposts on the left have moved, she's being called a right winger, which is insane. And look,
that's sad that the moderate left is becoming called right wingers. I think that's just crazy to me. And I want to get to this because AOC is definitely not on the moderate, but she talks about taxing the rich. And I want to get to that real quick because I'm seeing here in New York, they want to fine people based on their income, meaning if you're a high income earner, you're going to be taxed more, fined more. AJ, they're doing everything to scare people away from the state of New York, the city of New York. And I just think that's a generalization. They're doing everything to scare everybody from the rich to the women. What is this? Why? How do we let it get this bad?
Well, I mean, look, New York was always teetering on the precipice. Um, if you've got a bunch of incompetents voting, they're going to vote for an incompetent people, whether it's your school board or de Blasio or the jabroni that's mayor right now. I mean, these are not the best and brightest, right? And that's not who you're dealing with here. New York is filled with talent, but due to the nastiness in politics and social media and character assassination and all kinds of other things, plenty of talented people they're not even going to try to throw their hat in the ring anymore. They're just going to go do something else. I mean, the country is blessed that Donald Trump, who's worth $9 billion, wants to continually put himself through hell on behalf of the Constitution and people of the United States. And look, with him, they broke the mold. I mean, there's not a lot of Donald Trumps out there. So, it's tough. It's tough. So you're gonna continue to get backbenchers holding public office in New York.
I've had my gripes with Trump over the last couple of years, especially back end of 2020, but I just don't see it DeSantis competing with him, and I think he's looking stupid and foolish. I could be wrong. Maybe you could disagree, but I just think up against Trump, he's not looking like a viable primary candidate right now.
No, he's not. It's a fantasy. He's very talented and smart. My advice to everyone running, unless you're running as an activist like Vivek is, is to just clear a pathway. I mean, there's some unfinished business. DeSantis can still be governor in 4 years, 3 years. So, I don't destroy yourself by getting in between, Godzilla and the left, because you're not.
Why does the left? If the left wasn't so obsessed in indicting Trump, he wouldn't have even really been in the picture. Or do you think he was always going to be there, no matter if this indictment came down or not?
Do I always think that Trump was going to be there?
What I mean by that is so Alvin Bragg was actually going to walk away from indicting Trump. Then Trump announces he's running. He gets indicted by Bragg, and that just fueled the fire. What they don't realize is they're fueling the fire for Trump, not stopping it.
No, you're right. I mean, look, it's a chicken and egg thing there. Maybe they thought Trump was just going to die on the vine, or someone else would indict him or something. But they are scared to death of Trump's voters. That's really who they're after. Trump's had goofy lawsuits thrown at him his whole life. His whole time as a public person. Been one goofy lawsuit after another. But what this really is about is they are scared to death of those 77 million people that voted for him. And they see the weak antelope in the White House, and they're worried he can win again.
Do you think the wokeism is covered? Do you think it's funny the wokeism actually affects the left, meaning that they do exactly what they accuse everybody else of doing? Is that a pattern still, or do you still find that happening, that they accuse everybody else of doing it, but they're doing it? What I mean is a CIA chief is on Epstein Island. They're criticizing Trump for dealing with Epstein. I mean, they're doing everything that they're saying Trump did. Isn't that kind of ironic?
Well, I mean, hypocrisy has no bounds, right? When you're dealing with government, you're dealing with government employees or people with power and unlimited resources. So, yeah, I mean, look, I haven't studied the Epstein stuff that much, but I mean, that's sort of the old Marxist trope, right? Accuse your enemy of doing what you're doing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked.
Do you laugh when they cancel themselves, like when Don Lemon's fired from CNN, or other things, that even these writer strikes are canceling out their own hosts now? I think it's just kind of a karma comic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, look, you just look at the Me Too movement, right? All of a sudden, they're outraged by women's pay scales and somebody getting their rear end grabbed at an after party. But for years, they protected Epstein and Weinstein and Matt Lauer and all kinds. Matt Lauer had like a trap door in his office. I mean, he had like women in a pit, like Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs. I mean, they protected these people for years. Then all of a sudden, they feign outrage. Oh God, they're fainting on Victorian couches. I don't think so. I mean, it's classic. So, I mean, these people defended
Yeah.
OJ. They defended OJ. They defended Bill Clinton. And all of a sudden, they're outraged about Matt Lauer. Well,
Hard to believe
it's
the Clinton was
hypocrisy.
25 years ago. That's wild to me. But let me ask you this. So there's no trapdoor mechanism under your desk, right, AJ? You're clean as a whistle at your office of Publius, right?
Yeah, it's like Jabba's palace with the Rancor under the floor, right? If you come in, try to make a move, no. My wife is my vice president of the company. Believe me, there's no trap doors, and if anything, she's got one for me.
Well, I like that when we started this, you said the wokeness is in your kitchen and your schools, and then obviously Youngkin is a big proponent of getting rid of the wokeness from schools. So hopefully he can keep doing that. I don't think he should run for president. I don't know
It
that
doesn't sound like he is. It doesn't sound like he is. And unfortunately, though, in Virginia, for us, for Virginians,
right? Because you're down in Virginia, so
you're done after 4 years. They're term limited. You can't be governor for more than 4 consecutive years. So, he can't run again. He can't serve 8 years like DeSantis or Chris Christie. So he's going to be looking for a job, the year after this presidential election. So who knows? Maybe he's running for vice president. I don't know. But
for those who, I don't know, maybe don't like the term woke, why is that such an important term? And why did you want to title it The Walking Dead? There's obviously more behind than just the title.
Well, sure. I'm making fun of The Walking Dead. It's
I love that. I love that bit too. Yep.
Yeah. So it's the number one TV show in the world for almost a decade. And it's fun. It's funny. I like the old cheesy zombie movies too. The cover of the book kind of looks like, the George Romero movie posters from 40 years ago. But, we're having some fun with these people because a lot of them are mindless like zombies. They do shuffle about like zombies. And I'm a pop culture guy. I mean, if you open the inside flap of the book, one of the first things you see is the monologue that Vincent Price gives in Michael Jackson's Thriller music video. Okay. So this is my Thriller album. So if you go through this book, you'll notice it's 10 sections and there's like 98 vignettes. So I set it up almost like a music album where each one of these things is kind of like a track listing inside, a specified category. So whether it's sports or entertainment or the media or technology, and I tried to thematically weave it all together. Some of it works better than others, but it's all fun along the way. I mean, if you're listening to this interview, I write the way I talk. So, I'm from Philadelphia. I don't mess around. I wanted to be Allen Iverson when I grew up, mixed with Rush Limbaugh. So that's where I'm at.
Well, you certainly tackle everything from the beta males to trans movement to Biden being the Chinese president. I got to ask you about that before we're done, because I was like, all right, what does he mean here? Then I read into it and I'm like, well, yeah, it seems like they were installing him. And obviously they put out the virus to stop Trump. So is he the Chinese president?
Well, look, even if more data has come to light, even since that was written. I mean, you could do a whole book on his connections to China. We just did one section. It looks like he owes all kinds of nefarious regimes favors. It certainly does. I mean, they had to bend over backwards to try to find some Trump connection. He wanted to build a hotel in Moscow and the permit was denied and this and that. I mean, Biden and his criminal brother and his criminal son have been running around leveraging the Biden name and his positions in government for 50 years. They are professional grifters. And the Chinese, who are very patient and have a long memory, recognize that and have been using it for as long as Joe has been in office, like most likely. So, yeah, believe me, he's our first Chinese president.
Sign here, Joe. All right, man, I'll do that. I'll sign right there. Okay, come on, man. Give me that pen, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just gave Taiwan away. Yeah, exactly.
It's, one, and then, of course, yesterday, my favorite thing is, so you end Title 42, But you send 1,500 troops to the border knowing the aftermath. Just keep the freaking Title 42 in place then. What are we doing? It seems like we're just spinning in circles and everybody's laughing at us.
Well, that's all.
And
That's all a virtue signal campaign promise. It's garbage. I mean, it's all garbage. You know, if it worked for Trump and everyone liked it, take it away, but then replace it later. You know, stop building the wall. We're not going to build the wall. We're going to tear it down, but parts of it is being rebuilt as we speak. It's just crazy. That's what they're doing. They're virtue signaling to their kook base and trying to keep, from a full-on left-wing rebellion from happening, led by the real people that control the Democrat Party, and that is the squad, the AOC crowd. So
the Soros people, right? So now one last thing here, AJ, because it is serious to the point where we have our enemy laughing at us and just doing whatever they want, and we're not doing anything. So is that kind of your message in the entirety of the book? Is that, okay, well, guess what? We have all this nonsense going on in our country, but everybody's laughing at us. I mean, I feel like you hit home that point in that book. Is that one of your messages?
Sure. I mean, look, we have to laugh back. You have to make fun of them back. But the main message is to keep the true insurrection going. And what I mean by that is the insurrection of parents. Parents need to keep fighting wokeism at the local level. Don't look for Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell to come save you. Go out, take back your schools. Say no. Get Larry and Bill out of the women's locker room. Fight back. Go in there, wear a GoPro camera on the local level and try to change things that way. Because, the government's not going to save you no matter who's in power. So that's my main message, keep the parental insurrection going.
And they have to, because then thank God that was one blessing from COVID, right? Is that they finally got to see what their kids were learning because, hey, they had to help them. So that was kind of an unforeseen thing on the left, but finally the parents stepped in and said, hey, what are we doing here? So thank God for that.
Exactly.
All right.
Well,
AJ,
look, brother, this has been fantastic. Really. I really appreciate being on.
Well, we loved having you, and we're going to have you on again soon. Okay. And definitely keep us updated on part 2.
Absolutely. You'll be getting a copy as soon as it hits the presses. God bless you.
And
God bless you and your audience, man. And just big shout out, I said a prayer for your old man. Keep your head up, keep fighting. He probably loved the country as much as you do. I really appreciate it.
He grew me up on conservative talk, and I got into that. How about that? So
there you go.
All right, AJ Rice, thanks so much. And real quick, is the email list for just media people only? And how
anyone. You can go to Publius National Post on Substack. You can go to PubliusPR.com, right? Or the WalkingDeadBook.com and get a copy of the book.
Amen, brother. All right. Thank you so much, AJ. And I will send my regards to Andrew Wokow. I know that you worked with him for a bit at the Blaze, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we were there at the same time, but he was doing something different than me. He was on TV side. I was doing radio. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I'll give him your regards anyway. AJ Rice, thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Nope. Love Wilco. Talk soon.
That was AJ Rice. I definitely can't wait to hear what part 2 of his Walking Dead series is going to be. But for now, I'm Alex Garrett on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.